Welcome to the 8th session of our workshop series, Workshops in Sustainability Career Paths and Curriculum. In this workshop series, for those who are new to this, you will hear from our alumni tonight share their insights on the courses that they've taken that have helped them launch successful careers in sustainability. After tonight's panel, there will be a Q&A session with our alumni panelists, so throughout the discussion, feel free to take notes. We'll have someone with a mic pass around so you can ask our panelists any questions you may have. I'm delighted to welcome our faculty moderator for tonight's panel, Sustainability Analytics. Tonight, it will be moderated by Professor Christoph Meinrenken. Christoph is Professor of Practice in the MS Sustainability Management Program at Columbia University, and he's also the Academic Director of the MS in Information Knowledge and Strategy Program, also at Columbia University School of Professional Studies. Christoph is also Principal Investigator at Columbia Climate School and affiliate of the Foundations of Data Science Center at the Data Science Institute. He also co-chairs the Columbia University Seminar on Complexity Science, Modeling, and Sustainability. His recent research projects include electricity arbitrage in smart buildings, electrification of the transportation sector, synthetic fuels, and automated product carbon footprinting. He's an expert in life cycle assessment and created the class that I'm sure our panelists will recommend tonight, Theory and Practice of Life Cycle Assessment. And he has also, in addition to being a professor and a program director, he has worked with the World Resources Institute, Carbon Disclosure Project, and the Sustainability Consortium, and advised several globally operating consumer goods manufacturers. This evening, joining Christoph, we have 5 alumni from the MS in Sustainability Management Program and 1 alumni from the School of International and Public Affairs. Canute Haroldson is joining us tonight. He is the Vice President of GTM Strategy at Welo Data. To his right is Valeria Morelli, Associate Vice President, Sustainability Product Team at ISS Corporate. And then next to her is Zhechen Wu. He is the GHG Subject Matter Expert at ISS Corporate. And then following that, we have Julia Millot, Carbon Accounting and Target Setting Lead of Carbon Direct. And then lastly, we have Gauri Angrish, Net Zero Lead, Global Sustainability at Colgate-Palmolive. So with that, I'd like to welcome our alumni panelists tonight.
Thank you very much to all panelists, and thank you very much for anyone who was involved with organizing this event, which I hope will be very informative for everyone here in the room and also online. I brought you tonight sort of a spectrum of panelists. Starting over here with Canute. He's going to tell you in more detail what exactly he does, but Canute is someone who works in a company that works in data analytics, specifically also AI. And that specific company is actually not specifically working in sustainability. It's a broader company that can also be used for sustainability, but not only. All the way on the other side of the spectrum, if you will, we have Gauri. Actually, I don't know exactly what exactly you do because you've just started a new job. Congratulations. But I think broadly speaking, it's probably still correct that you are an expert more in sustainability management, sustainability strategy. And yes, you're very data savvy and software savvy, but you really use it more as a tool towards your other responsibilities. In the middle, we have Valeria, we have Zhechen, we have Julia. And I would argue you kind of fall in the middle of that spectrum because you work in companies that are a bit more dedicated to actual data and analytics software solutions. In your case, I think often specifically in the area of greenhouse gas accounting. And this kind of spectrum brings me to the definition of the theme tonight, which is sustainability analytics, which I define really as using data and analytics and applying that to sustainability, because otherwise there really isn't a field of sustainability analytics per se. For example, I thought a little bit about what modeling techniques, approaches, analytics are out there that specifically are used in sustainability, and I really only came up with 3. So obviously there's climate modeling. Second, I would argue is life cycle assessment. you might say, is that really an analytics technique? It's maybe a bit of a stretch. It's really more of an accounting methodology, but it's data heavy in analytics. And number three, probably GIS, so Geographic Information Systems, which is more of a software platform, but there's definitely also very, very large data amounts, and there's also analytics techniques. Other than that, yes, there's, probably tens of thousands of different analyses, modeling, analytics done in the area of sustainability, but it's all things and techniques that exist for any sectors that one can also apply to sustainability. And that's basically how I came to this field. So I'm a physicist by training. I also did a lot of math in my undergraduate, probability theory, statistics. And then I basically became a nerd in modeling, Monte Carlo simulations using large data sets, etc. And I applied that first in my master's degree to the modeling of molecular spectra. Then I did computational neuroscience for my PhD. Then I did financial engineering for 10 years in the private sector, mostly on credit risk management. And finally, now I'm here in Colombia in what sometimes we call sustainability analytics. So that's to lay the evening, the kind of theme for the evening. Before I turn questions over to the panel, I just wanted to get a quick show of hands in the room. I'm basically going to give you an option to show your hand for three different options. Number one, before you raise your hand, listen to all of the options. The first one is you consider yourself already very analytically savvy. The second option is you want to add more analytical skills to your portfolio. And the third option is you don't really necessarily want to go into analytics that much, but you're just here tonight to listen and learn more. So option one, already analytically savvy. All right, all right. I would say maybe a fourth of the room, roughly speaking. You want to add more analytical skills to your portfolio. Half of the room, roughly speaking. And then lastly, not least, not necessarily wanting to go into analytics, but you just want to learn more. All right, maybe a third or another quarter, something like that. All right, thank you very much. I will, thank you. So with that, esteemed panel, I have 5 questions for you. I warned you that you would each have approximately 2 minutes to answer the question, but we don't have to be ready just at 9 o'clock. We can go a bit over, that's fine. And then hopefully we'll have time for Q&A from the audience later. So my first question, important but very simply, just briefly describe your current role, your responsibilities, and really how you got there. And we'll start over here with Canute, please.
All right. Okay. Yes, we are on. All right. So yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Canute. Currently heading up go-to-market strategy at Welo Data, which is an AI data labeling company. Though that company might actually change in the not so distant future. But what does that really mean? Well, for the AI data labeling industry, that means that I'm going and saying, how do I really sell our services into a very narrow range of groups? You have the LLM majors, extremely concentrated, extremely high spending. You have your data rich groups. Think of like an eBay or a Walmart or something that has lots of things that must be categorized, imagery. They've got some form of information that's coming in, and enterprise things. I'm here in the AI industry, frankly, a little bit by chance, but the way I got in is I'd been working in solar for 5 years, was interviewing in San Francisco, and they said, well, if you can survive the solar industry, you can survive AI. So a little bit by the scope of being a hard worker is how I initially got in. But I've run operations for these companies for, I guess, close to 5 years at this point. Recently took up the go-to-market mantle. Yeah, and it doesn't have a lot to do with sustainability, but a lot with social sustainability, because people make the data that feeds all of these AI systems. And so while that might not be particularly carbon related, how you pay them, how you treat them, how you work with them is actually quite important.
Thank you. We're moving on to Valeria, another one of my fabulous teaching assistants, by the way.
Hi, everyone. Valeria here. I work as a product manager, if you will, at ISS Corporate. I work specifically in creating a materiality assessment tool to help companies report in their sustainability reports. ISS Corporate, if you don't know, is a large rater company. So we collect a lot of data from companies that are disclosing as part of their regular reporting cycles. And we use that in order to help companies determine what specifically they need to report on, specifically, make sure that they're not missing anything, specifically risks that they may have not considered in the past. My background is in law. So I am a lawyer by practice. I worked as a lawyer for 5 years back home in Colombia, came here, did SUMA. And as part of my whole journey here, I took a lot of quantitative classes that allowed me to learn how to understand large data sets. And that's basically what got me into this job and helping to create a new methodology for assessing materiality of topics.
Similar to Valeria, we work on the same team. I'm also developing a product. We have this greenhouse gas accounting platform that we use for other corporations to help them streamline their greenhouse gas accounting. I also do like some part of climate risk and then science-based target setting. So everything that's like climate change related. Prior to ISS, I worked in a sustainability consulting firm. And prior to that, I'm always in environmental science field. So like my undergrad degree is environmental science and economy. So like some analytics and science background. And I came to Columbia University's SEPA program for environmental science and policy just to like learn. I actually spend most of my time in SUMA classes, despite I'm in a different program, because I want to, like, I have the science background. I really want to learn more about like how do you apply this analytics into like business setting. So that landed me in my current position where greenhouse gas is my focus. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Julia Millot. Technically, my title is Carbon Accounting and Target Setting Lead, but I would say my remit at Carbon Direct is to really develop go-to-market strategies for any of our carbon measurement solutions, which many we're still developing, right? We do sell traditional carbon accounting and target setting software. We run supplier engagement programs for customers looking to decarbonize their scope 3 emissions, but if you don't know Carbon Direct, we are a very large, boutique carbon management consultancy, and we do end-to-end carbon management, right? So that starts with measuring what your emissions are, whether that's from a corporate, boundary perspective or a project boundary perspective, all the way through to diligencing carbon removal projects. So that's what we're probably best known for in the market. Prior to joining Carbon Direct, I was also a consultant, led climate-related work for Position Green. And before that, while I was a student at Columbia, I was actually running my own consultancy, working with small to medium-sized enterprises on carbon accounting, life cycle assessment, decarbonization strategies, et cetera. So yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me. I'll pass it to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gauri Angrish, and I work at Colgate-Palmolive. And as of yesterday, I started a new role, which is leading net zero carbon for Colgate. And also on the sustainability front, I'm leading the data and digital strategy, which is essentially the accounting piece, the governance piece of data, as well as the technology ecosystem we'll be using or we do use. And something which is totally new for me is the compliance piece. So all of that is covered into data and digital and then net zero carbon. Up till Friday, I was leading Scope 3, which I thought was tough enough. So this is going to be fun. For me, sustainability was an absolute pivot. Before I came to SUMA, I used to run my own startup in India. It was healthcare and tech in pharmaceutical supply chain. And once I took an exit from that, I sort of wanted to pivot towards sustainability. And SUMA for me was, I think, the best decision to make, especially for a pivot, because it allows you to make kind of your own career and like understand various facets of it. For me, I was very certain that I knew I was good at operationalizing stuff, but like SUMA helped me understand that I wanted to focus more on climate or environmental sustainability and risk, and looking at more like analytics or getting like the work done to achieve your targets. And I was lucky, I got an internship at Colgate from SUMA itself, and that led to my job. Happy to be here.
All right, the next couple of questions are sort of the core theme of tonight, SUMA classes, or maybe also other classes at Columbia that you have found through electives, etc. We're going to start the first question with Gauri, and the question is basically, please name 2 courses. Actually, if you're all going to say LCA, then maybe come up with a third one.
No, because I was going to answer that first, and I was going to be unique. So like...
and you do not have to say LCA. Name 2 courses that were really that you took while you were here and that you found really helpful, and explain why. And maybe you can split your answer into one course that's kind of obvious. You already sort of expected that class would be, of course, yeah, that's a no-brainer. I have to take this class, and hopefully it was helpful. And maybe another one that you kind of found by happenstance, by sort of, oh, you would have never thought that class would be so instrumental in your sort of analytics-oriented career.
I mean, I was going to say LCA, obviously, because like it takes you through a lot of details, but like you need it. Even in my role, I don't create LCAs, but if I didn't have that in-depth knowledge, I couldn't do it. But for me, GHG accounting was something which was a no-brainer, like given that I wanted to be in climate and I was looking at like corporate sustainability. It was very useful, at least for someone like me who had no foundation on climate, understanding, you know, the various protocols, understanding how the different scopes are like completely work differently from each other, what kind of data goes behind it. And so that was very helpful for me. But I would say like I took it in the second term, which kind of helped me, because in the first term I took like more foundational classes of like theory, which it was helpful to already know a little bit before going into the analytical part of it. And then I hadn't thought of a third one because the question was 2 with LCA. But okay, one of the classes which I didn't know I would take, but I ended up taking was reporting. What was CSR? Corporate corporate sustainability reporting, CSR, with Celine. That turned out to be extremely helpful, and because essentially we're doing everything to report, and now like initially or like till last year or this year things were like optional, but things are now becoming like mandatory, and like all the guidelines and everything are based on what the reporting guidelines are and how you're going to like have all these KPIs on, and how they need to be like having documentational proof, because if you get audited, like how that works. So I feel like reporting ended up being really helpful. And maybe for our batch, we kind of got lucky because mid-class, the GHG accounting protocol changed. So like she took like a week off, and then we had like, so that was interesting because that's exactly what happens, you know? So even with Colgate, we've gone through a cycle where we've started reporting KPIs, but then the KPIs change. So you have to like kind of reshuffle everything. So I think that was very helpful for me to just understand output of data and how everything is kind of linked.
Is this one on already? Oh, okay, great. Yeah, I mean, life cycle assessment. Well, okay, so I should say, like when Professor Meinrenken did the little survey at the beginning, I would have raised my hand and said I was analytically savvy, because prior to becoming, being a SUMA student, I was an analyst for 7 years. I worked at large consumer insights companies. I built out consumer insights teams in new markets. So I was like, I'm going to go to school and take really ambitious classes off the bat. And I didn't have an advisor to tell me to not take LCA my first semester. So I took it with the full course load. But I loved it. And it ended up being really impactful because as someone who just was naturally good with numbers and drawing conclusions from numbers, it was a great class for me to take. And like I mentioned earlier, I started my own consultancy while I was a student. By that fall, I had I was on a client paying project for a life cycle assessment for, a small personal care company. So that was amazing, right? I couldn't have done that without the course. And I'm not just saying that to pander to the professor. I don't really do life cycle assessments anymore, but to Gauri's point, right, it's just very helpful when you're looking into how regulations, framework standards, corporates are changing, and how they're reporting on things to just have that context. So I highly recommend it. Carbon accounting was obviously a fundamental class for me as well, because I do carbon accounting predominantly, but I think to be maybe different and give some alternative answers. I also took consumerism and sustainability my first semester. I thought that was a great course because at the time I thought I wanted to go in-house and work at a big brand. And so being able to understand how consumers thought about sustainability and what metrics resonated with them, what stories resonated with them was really exciting to me. I don't work in-house at a consumer-oriented brand, and most of the companies I work with are B2B. Some of them are B2C. But just being able to understand how to tell a story, couldn't undersell that enough, right? Like, I just was doing a panel last week for my undergrad and telling them, like, take communications as an undergrad student, like learn how to talk to people in business, right? Because that is a skill everyone needs everywhere, but especially in sustainability. Like, we need stronger storytellers. And then kind of like a bonus course, I would say, is I can't quite remember the name of it, but I audited a course in the engineering school on energy. And I wanted to just kind of like hear from an engineer, like, what is, the carbon intensity of solar versus wind versus nuclear versus geothermal, and just kind of like wrap my head around that in not such a market specific way in the way that other courses in SUMA do, but more in a science way, which has become helpful now that I'm working with a lot of scientists at Carbon Direct. At least I have a little bit of footing. I can't quite contend with them in the same way, but I at least feel like I'm not a total plebe.
Thank you. Zhechen.
I totally agree with Julia. Well, I come from a science background, so the first thing I came to SUMA courses, I was like, I want to improve my communication. So the first course I took is data visualization. It's not like a communicating course, but like it's more important about storytelling. Like I see the numbers, I see the result, like what does it mean? Like how do you explain? So that really helps. The next course I feel like also helpful was international and project finance. I'm not in finance industry. I have no prior knowledge about finance, so I've used that course to help me fulfill like what I'm missing. And then that course also is another course where you use the numbers to tell a story, because one of the I think the fun and during the course, like, we have to convince that our model is right to the potential investors that the professor brought in, and then you have to give a clear reasoning and help answer like, why should the investor invest in this energy project? So that's really helpful. That's the number, like turning the numbers into something convincing, which really helps to improve my communication skill.
Because I'm a lawyer, as I told you guys, one of the first classes that I wanted to take, that I knew that I wanted to take, was I think it's called like Policy and the Legal Context for Sustainability Managers. I was just curious to see how the legal world will transplant into this new world. Similar to Gauri, I used SUMA as like my pivot point in which I knew that I wanted a change in careers. After having worked in a law firm for like 5 years, I was just done with that and just wanted a regular 9 to 5. But yeah, I knew that I wanted something that would help me make that mental bridge of like, this is where I come from, this is where I'm going to. And that class was really helpful just for me to kind of get there. Again, as a lawyer, zero analytical skills, or like zero like numerical quantitative skills. So I figured, like, why not do LCA, right? Like, that just sounds fun. And Professor Meinrenken will recall that Gauri and I would spend like probably like an hour after class asking questions and questions, because we were just trying to wrap our minds around like, what do you mean cradle to grave? Do we have to consider this, that, or the other for homework 4, which if you haven't done so already, you'll get very familiar with it. And I love that class so much because it just allowed me to, again, understand more of the quantitative side of things. I loved it so much that I ended up being a TA for the class and then a course associate for the class for like as long as I was able to. And also, by the way, being in that other side of things and helping other students understand those concepts was, again, helping me to kind of wrap my head around them as I was kind of teaching them, if you will. Other classes, like Gauri also mentioned, and Julia, CSR, obviously a lot of my work has to do with reporting. So understanding reporting frameworks and how they keep changing all over. is really helpful for me. But then another class was more of the quantitative side of things. I believe it was also from the engineering school, and it was called carbon capture something. Remember? And sequestration, yeah, carbon capture, sequestration, something. Very technical, very, very scientific, but also helpful to have conversations with clients when they're trying to determine what their strategy should be. As part of my job, because materiality is kind of like all-encompassing, and determining what's material for you kind of goes into so many tangents. Also, having that sort of technical knowledge can be helpful, so that they know that you know what you're talking about and be able to explain why things are actually material for them. So yeah, I would say that those would be my recommendations.
Alrighty. I've got the joy of then going, oh, what do I mention now? So I mean, I will do one more plug for LCA because I think there are very few times that that you are forced to do a true soup to nuts thing. You have to take something all the way from the start to all the way at the end. There are no shortcuts. You just got to do it, and that's extremely valuable. And I also think an understanding of what is subjective in data that is part of that class is particularly important. So if you're looking to build out your analytical skills, that's a very, very critical piece to understanding data well. And there aren't a lot of pieces where you're going to get to do that unless you start going into like statistics or like game theory or things like that. But to then make two other recommendations, I think to the communications bend, writing for Global Science and International Media, or Writing for Science and International Media, which is Claudia Dreyfus's class. Typically a very small class. She only accepts a max of 15 students, and you will have to write a good article. You have to do it. And if you cannot do it, she will tell you exactly why you cannot do it. And you can have an ego and say, no, 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 I'm so good at writing. Or you can accept that she's done it for quite a long time. And this is going to help you actually be a better writer. Because ultimately, regardless of where you're working, whether you're working in data or whether you are working in something that is far more communications based, if you cannot tell a moving and succinct story with what you're doing, it tends not to matter. As soon as you get lost in the vagaries or the science, you tend to lose. And then the last one I'd say actually is for those of you who might be thinking of taking summer courses. I believe the course is called Sustainability in the Built Environment. And I had a great time there because I think another element that's actually very important to kind of this idea of the subjectivity of data, that class runs through a lot of history of decision making, of urban building. Why was this the thought process at the time? How did that then influence the way that cities were built out, the way that natural elements were integrated or not integrated, and how we've continued to evolve our understanding, which I think is very important because it's easy, I think, to, especially if you get into the analytics world, to think, oh, I'm the hero. I know better than anyone else, and I'm going to tell this story first. Until you do some digging and found out that, oh, well, someone built a dashboard for that. No, they tried to, put this table here. They tried to make this calculation before. The lesson in doing your history well is actually quite a relevant and valuable one, I think.
All right. Thank you. Before we move on to the next question, maybe just one more attempt on identifying a class. You mentioned a couple of storytelling with data, communication, even the writing piece. I like the comment about understanding the history, appreciating that something might have been done before. Is there like maybe just one person wants to come forward and name a class that was really, really surprising, but helped you a lot later in your analytics-oriented work?
For me, corporate sustainability reporting was because you had to build out a compliant report at the end of the class, a real compliant report. And maybe this is because I'm a little bit anal or a little bit of a crazy person, but when we were building out that report, actually creating a metricized tabular thing where then I could go in and pull all of the elements of what I needed, where we would change a slide or change something in the report, and then I'd have to say, is this still compliant? Does this language line up? Do we actually meet these values, and structuring our paper that way rather than structuring it in a way where we were just doing the natural writing and checking afterwards. That forced me to then say, well, this isn't just analytics. This is like relevant natural language matching. How am I actually going to do, some sort of sorting? Do I want a column that's going to look in this? Do I want to break it down into the subheaders? What's actually valuable in this information that's going to be important for me? And how can I pull it out to then like make a greater decision? So in that case, I wasn't doing anything that was extremely numbers oriented, but I did have to think about how that language actually pulled into a formulaic product that we were making.
Yeah.
Just add one more. I also, my last semester, I decided to audit some classes pretty loosely. But I did audit energy markets and innovation, and I probably should have just taken the class, honestly. But in thinking about where it applied to work later on, when I was doing climate consulting, I was leading TCFD analyses, and a lot of that is built on IEA data. And so that class covered a lot of energy-related data and trends that are happening. So if you guys aren't familiar with IEA, it's the International Energy Agency. They put out a World Energy Outlook report every year. They just released it, I think, a couple of weeks ago for 2025. But that was a helpful course because even though I wasn't quite using at the time, it then became helpful to think back on when I was actually performing those analyses.
Yeah, thank you. I always found the corporate and sustainability reporting class very interesting because it's actually corporate sustainability reporting and strategy, right? So then at the end of that table that Canute was describing, a bit simplifying, then there is this idea, how do you turn this into a narrative and into a story for the organization? A very important piece. All right, we're gonna go to the next question. Canute is gonna start. Put your hat on as the sort of, advisory board of the sustainability management program at Columbia University, and look back and think about classes that you were not able to take, either because they didn't exist at the time, but now exist, or actually they still don't exist, and you think that should really be a class to be developed here. And again, please focus on very much the like why and connect it to your job now.
The SUMA curriculum this semester, sustainable entrepreneurship, but no, it's been around for a while. I thought it was in a different school. Oh no. Well, had I known better, I would have gone after it. But I did not. Okay, well that nukes that plan for me to answer with that. But I think if I were to then say what would I be looking for that's not necessarily in the program, there is an element of that entrepreneurial side that is about scaling up. How do you actually then like take things and deploy them well? You do this a little bit in the kind of project finance classes, where you understand how a thing is going to be financed, but then what's actually the, run through the full scenario, run through the case study, whether it's a big solar array or building, you're associated with building a peaker plant or something like that. What are the things that are going to get in your way? Where are you going to have legal trip ups that are going to stop you? And this actual experience of just having to deploy a project, and it's going to be messy. There's going to be weird stuff where it's almost like a long form case study where you just say, surprise, the world collapsed today. And actually, that's part of it. It's just we didn't tell you ahead of time, and now your homework has changed. It sounds maybe a little bit cruel, but at the same time, it's very common for like project development to go through this sort of thing. So whether you're looking at it from the entrepreneurial side of, oh, I want to build something new, whether it's something like deep tech or I want to replicate something, or you want to go into something that's more energy focused or more kind of standard build out, I think that enforcement would have been nice to have. How's that? All right. Okay.
Thank you. I think one of the classes that I would have liked to see at the time when I was doing SUMA, and I believe this is a new class, it's something along the lines of sustainability product development-ish. Yeah, it's fairly new. And again, product manager here. So I would have loved to kind of learn that in school instead of having to learn on the job. As as part of my job, like I am like the methodology person behind everything, but I knew nothing about product management, sorry, as I started my job. So having some sort of background on that would have been super helpful, because it's not only like, coming up with the idea, testing it, making sure that, coordinating with the teams, the developers, the UX people, UI people. It's also a lot of talking to different stakeholders within the company to get buy-in for sponsor your product and get, resources to get the dev people to actually work on things, and having to present to like managerial people, C-level people. I feel like, I don't know, I kind of knew some of that from my lawyer background, but it's not the same thing to kind of make your case in a field that you're not familiar with, especially like digital tools and all of that. So maybe having access to that sort of classes specifically related to product management would have been helpful at the time.
Thanks. I can cross that one off my list here, because when Canute was speaking earlier, I thought about, data analytics, digital apps, software, and the entrepreneurship. So then to have a course that brings that together, and also the scalability and how that actually works in practice. Very interesting thoughts. Thank you. Zhechen.
As a CPA person, I really feel like you guys have every course that's practical. You guys have climate risk course too, right? Yeah, I really don't have anything else yet. I guess the product management works. Like, is there, like, I wish we have like a LCA course. I wish we have like a corporate or a strat reporting course. But yeah, I really don't have anything yet. I think it's perfect.
Well, I wrote down about like 5 classes. So yeah, I went to town. I was like, can I go to SUMA again? No, and I don't regret taking any of the classes I did, but like the world moves and changes so quickly, and you also don't really know where your career is going to take you. So you sort of like make bets on like, I'm interested in this, so I'm going to take XYZ courses, and then opportunities come, and you're like, oh, actually, I should have taken ABC. But I'd say I could run through all of them. I'm basing this off of title only, so I actually have no idea if these classes really cover what I think they do. But I see there's a sustainability operations class on supply chain management specifically. As someone that does scope 3 or scope 3 decarbonization, like super critical to think about and learn about how supply chain management works. Like, what does procurement do? How do like products actually get from point A to point B? You learn a little bit of that in LCA, but not in the way that would really be applied in a corporate setting. I saw there's a class called Critical ESG, Navigating Opposition and Building Resilience, going off of like the storytelling narrative we were all kind of alluding to earlier. I mean, it's a tough climate right now. Some of us were just like catching up and saying like, yeah, how are things going? It's like not as good as they were when we were students. I was a student from 2021 to 2023. That was like such a boon for sustainability, momentum, and action. And we've clawed back a bit. So being able to know why we're in the state we are and have some optimism and resiliency about how to get through it and how to communicate that to people you're working with is super critical. And then just because I work at Carbon Direct and we touch so many different things, I also had electrification and decarbonization. We're doing a lot around data centers and the growth of AI and how to do that sustainably. So just wrapping my head around that a bit more would have been cool. Obviously, like I mentioned, Carbon Direct is really involved in the carbon markets. So I see there's a class now on carbon markets and global climate governance. Understanding the difference between the voluntary and regulatory spaces there is really interesting and can be really helpful, especially since there's a lot of, I think, misinformation or like bad raps that I've even personally changed my opinion on. And then finally, climate tech and innovation, because we work with so many large investment companies that are funding the next phase of climate solutions, and being able to understand like what makes a good tech product, what makes a good solution, and how do the people that we're engaging with think about this would be really valuable.
Gauri.
So I definitely agree with the sustainable operations supply chain management. I wish it existed. And I'm going to say this, I feel Professor Christoph and I manifested this class because we have discussed it a lot in terms of like this gap that needed to be filled. But on that note, one big thing I noticed, and I think this is a realization everyone has after studying and then going to work, is there's a huge gap between like the knowledge we gain in terms of the expertise of sustainability and then how we apply it. So from a corporate lens, I feel like I wish there was a class that taught me a little bit more then subject matter expertise on embedding sustainability across different functions in a corporate. Like each function works very differently. Procurement obviously is one of the most complicated ones. Scope 3 category 1 is a beast. But at the same time, it's like to embed sustainability, or even if you look at just climate across a function, you need the subject matter expertise. You need to understand what kind of technology will work. You need to understand how you'll be educating these people who really don't care about sustainability because they already have a lot happening in their life, to prioritize it. Like one thing I've learned and is that essentially the sustainability team in-house should not be doing the work. They should be creating the strategy, creating the protocols, creating the KPIs and the workflows. And then the work should be done by the functional people who are not educated in sustainability. So a class that would teach me this whole ecosystem of how to like take that subject matter expertise and like build it into a language that every different function understands, and how do I embed it and scale it up, I think that would have been like very helpful for me. And then a class that did exist, but I wish I had taken, was data visualization. Because I'm like, half of my job is talking to people who don't know or care much about sustainability. And I feel like if my diagrams and slides were better, I could have done a way better job. I did take sustainability metrics, which was kind of helpful, but that was still in the language of sustainability. But I feel like data visualization would have really helped.
All right, thank you. And just to correct Gauri, the idea of the supply chain management class with regards to decarbonization especially came really from you and not from me. But all right, so we're moving on to the next question, please. We're going to start again with Gauri. It's a question that you can give. You don't have to give a very long answer because I'm sure it's going to come up again during the Q&A afterwards. And it's also a question that I'm going to ask deliberately broadly without being very specific, because I want everyone to be able to comment in various ways. So the question is just your thoughts on AI.
Okay, so on a positive note, I feel like AI is an absolute enabler for everything that we do. And when I say enabler, I mean like it gives us intelligence that we did not have or needed to rely on, you know, people who had core knowledge about certain things, or like external consultants. Like for example, if there are like 10 different materials that you're looking to decarbonize in procurement, there are 10 actions you can take, or the supplier can take, for each of these materials. Each of those actions would cost something different, and each of those actions would have a different impact on the decarbonization. And using AI, you can create these models to understand what your prioritization would be, what the cost models would be, which region has more supply of, say, a certain feedstock. So AI really helps create that intelligence that you can give to then, say, in this example, procurement people, to have intelligent discussions with suppliers and therefore come up with a solution which makes sense. So I think it's a really good enabler, but the initial prompts and how to use it and what you need to use it for need to come from your strategy. But I think it's really helping us in these places where otherwise we would have to pay consultants or like rely on maybe geographically specific knowledge and then make assumptions for another region. So that's one thing it really helps us with. I know this is not a part of the question, but like one thing I hate about AI is that everyone is now using it for everything. And I feel like I have sat in meetings where two people have literally tried to write the same email response from their own AI systems. And it's like kind of dumbing us all down. So I feel like it needs to be limited in the way we're using it. Also, there's now this whole new emissions that we need to calculate because like people are just using more AI. So from that front, I'm a bit like we need to have some regulation, not regulations, that's a bit harsh, but like just maybe internal guidelines in place in terms of not overusing AI. But of course, it's very helpful as intelligence.
Good point. I think there's also some software out there that's still the exact same software as 5 years ago, but now guess what? It's AI enabled. Okay, Julia.
Yeah, I think to build on what Gauri said, intentionality when it comes to AI, right? Like there's the macro AI impact and there's the micro, like you using AI impact.
as a sustainability professional, don't be afraid to use AI because it's going to have sustainability impacts associated with it, right? Like it's actually very small compared to other lifestyle changes that you could make that would have a much greater impact. Like one query is not nearly as carbon intensive as eating meat or taking an airplane, right? So, and I'm talking like very infinitely smaller than those actions, right? So if you're trying to be a conscious person in the world, like your AI queries are not going to be the problem. But at a macro scale, it is, right? So that means when you're using AI, be a good steward, be intentional. Poop in, poop out, right? Like, like you put bad stuff in, you're going to get bad stuff out. Like, ask good questions, be really intentional, and like learn how to prompt engineer, right? Like being able to ask AI what you need and know where it's going to derive sources from or how to like push it and think of better questions means you don't need to have as many queries and as many exchanges, which means the carbon impact of that's going to be lower. So yeah, to me, it's all about intentionality.
For me, I think AI is more like an efficiency tool. It's a good multiplier that helps you make everything more efficient, but like a double-edged sword, like I hate like they keep hallucinating, which is something you always have to double check. Hence I feel like a lot of I feel like in the industry, like a lot of people are jumping on the AI hype train too fast, like ignoring the risks that's coming with it. Because like in professional, like if you make the mistake, it can come with you for a long period of time. So like it's a good tool. It's a good force multiplier. It really helps move things like smoother and faster and more standardized. But like for instance, sending an email, like if everybody can tell like it's AI generated from your email tone alone, like do the client feel the respect? Like those are the questions we should consider. And it's what's the other thing? I forget, but it's fine. But yeah, it's just a force multiplier in my opinion.
And Zhechen knows this. We've had a lot of discussions about how to use AI to improve our work. I feel like what we've spent the most time working on is how to improve our prompts, because that's ultimately, like Julia was also saying, you just need to be very intentional of how and what you ask AI to do for you. If you're using it for research, I've had many cases as well of hallucination where it just says stuff, and when I ask it like, can you give me the source of this that you're saying, it'll tell me the source super confidently, and then I'll go and check it, the page, the quote doesn't exist. So always double check your work, especially if you're client facing, because we've had cases within the company where people just send stuff and then it's like, oh, it wasn't there. So you need to kind of backtrack that. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a net positive. It really helps our work in our day-to-day. I wouldn't use it for like stuff that you can do on your own, like writing an email to a client. I feel like that loses a lot of your personal touch. And like Sachin said, people can tell that it's AI generated. But yeah, no, just work on your prompts and try to, there's a lot of online resources as well to kind of guide you in the prompt engineering world. But yeah, I think it's a really good tool.
So I would say don't use it to start and don't use it to finish is my is my recommendation. Hey, I don't know. However much you feel like, and trust me, I've been working in AI and AI data labeling specifically for 5 years. But I mean, really, really for me, not using it to start comes from you will sound or act just like the most generic thing if you're using it to fully start. If the concept didn't come from you, you're just like, hey, help me spitball, then you're going to get the same stuff that everyone else gets in much the same format with often the same phrasing and prose and whatnot. You will not sound like you. But also don't use it to finish. This is not your final touch. You still need to look at what the outputs really are after it's happening. And ultimately, this is a probabilistic word calculator. It is not There's no inherent intelligence behind this. All the discussion of agentic elements or things are just breaking it down into a simple enough step that you can verify an input and an output in the most reliable way. So don't assign it intelligence or emotion or anything like that. That's not what it is. Frankly, that's not what the technology that underlies it can ever achieve with the way that it's currently built out. But do recognize it as your potential force multiplier. What, if a lot of how I've referred to natural language earlier on in comments, it's look, what are you doing some sort of reference across multiple documents? Maybe it makes sense to dig into a little bit into how RAG works and say, yeah, if I have to consult 50 different documents and understand what the likely value between these things are, that's where a word calculator might be useful. Are you still going to want to check after the fact? Yes. But this is where you think, how can this accelerate me without it being how I start completely and also without it being the final touch? Then you're going to find it to be extremely useful. But yeah, it's not magic, and the people who are going to use it the best are going to be the ones who actually have a very intentional design for what output and input they expect.
All right, thank you. We'll move to the last question, 1 to 2 minutes max per person, please. Because as everyone who's taken my class knows that I like lots of questions from the audience. I want to make sure we have time for that. Those who have taken my class also know that I often use a photograph of students sitting on the steps of Low Library on campus. And I kind of want you to think of that right now and think back on your time at Columbia, think about you at your current job, and maybe even into the future. And based on that, what advice would you give to the students in the room and online in terms of what classes to take? Well, that we covered already. Maybe more in the direction of networking, self-improvement, job search, etc. Do you have like a best of kind of advice that you like to give? We'll start over here.
Yeah. My best of is have the audacity. A lot of us, perhaps all of us, at some point will go, oh, well, I couldn't ask that of that person. I couldn't possibly do that. Except when you have the audacity to go up and say hi to your professor, make a friend, reach out, hey, I heard you do this. Do you want to talk about it? Oh, you're a very high up executive at a company I like. Do you have time to have a coffee chat with me? I'm just a student. That's actually a very useful thing. But have the audacity, because the thing is, you think people get propositioned for mentorship and jobs and all this stuff all the time. If you can give any additional degree of intentionality to that, the thing is they don't actually get too many offers. So they're very excited when you're curious about how they do their work. But also, like, no one asks. So if you're willing to go and actually make the push, you can get connected with some very valuable people in your time here.
And I also say take advantage of networking opportunities that Columbia offers. I remember when we were doing our program, there was this mentorship thing that Women in Sustainability was having. It was not for women, but it was hosted by the student group. And I got assigned a mentor who was a lady that worked at Disney. And she would just like review my CV and like she would chat to me to like, I was like, oh my God, I'm struggling with like these interview questions. Can you help me? And people often are very eager to help you. As a student, you'll be like, I'm just trying to navigate this new world. Can you please, help me with that? That's one thing. And then the other thing I would say is just to not let imposter syndrome hinder you. We were just talking about that earlier as well. Like, I think we all feel it and we all feel like we're just faking it here. I feel like I'm faking it right now, but here I am in front of all of you, just like jump in and do stuff. Like no one cares. No one's paying that much attention as you feel like they are. It's all in your head. So just like get on with it and do it.
I'll be more on the practical side, which is, I want to say about imposter syndrome too, but I'm just like, okay, I'm just gonna find a different one. So, if you have a dream job, you're applying for a junior position, always find somebody that's like usually the title with like director or associate director that's on the same team, and then send an outreach email like just because there is a likelihood that he or she will become the hiring manager. And in order to find that email, like just find a random person, try to send an email to their company, and then okay, you find the company domain. Okay, now you just put that first name, last name of the hiring manager, and see if you can like make it. I mean, it's a possibility, and then if you actually did it, and if they respond back, it's increases their hiring chance. So try it, I guess. Yeah.
I think all of those are all still building off of what Canute said about having the audacity, which I might steal that. That's a good one. I would say take advantage, right? I mean, there's something really special about the atmosphere that exists on a college campus that like, I had an experience for 7, 8 years between undergrad and graduate school that like, I was just so excited to be able to go to events and be part of student groups again and meet people and make friends. Like, do that. Like, it doesn't matter what age you are, right? Like that, it's great to find mentors and alumni, right? To like make connections with, but a lot of your peers are going to become really influential, cool people in the space. Make friends, like make good connections with people, join student groups, like what your peers are organizing for you to do, what your professors and program organizers are putting together for you. Like you guys are already doing a good job because you came here, right? So like you're already coming to events, but go to as many as you can. And not just for SUMA. Like you're a Columbia student, go to any Columbia event. You can. And hey, we just had to come into a closed campus for the first time, like since we were students on open campus, like, you won't be able to just walk into things anymore, right? So take advantage of that. And then I would say like take classes outside of SUMA. I'm sorry, Cindy, but like I didn't take classes outside of SUMA until later, and I thought they were so great. And going back to the whole idea of like what's special about a college campus community is it just opens ideas, right? So like if you're kind of curious about something, like go see what's happening in School of Public Health or engineering or architecture. Like there's great classes, and you can always audit them. Like I audited that engineering class because I was like, no way, I want to fail that class if I take this for a grade, right? So take advantage of those opportunities.
Overlap. One is the Columbia SUMA professors. I think it's a really good program because like a lot of the professors, most of them they have other things that they're doing outside being the professors. And I think that for me was the greatest. Like I spoke with every professor, I understood what they do. I got internship opportunities. I got my job out of that. After getting my job, I got so much help because of like a lot of the professors who know everything that's happening in the real world. So I really feel like you really, capitalize on that and have discussions just beyond the class. Not in an opportunistic way, maybe always, but like there's a lot of knowledge to be learned and just understanding what's out there. I think the second thing I would say is maybe someone mentioned it, the power of like just saying you're a Columbia student really helps. And that helped me like reach out to a lot of people. I was shocked at like the kind of people who responded and I had like meetings with. And for me, like I'm not a big fan of the word networking because I feel like it's people taken in a very transactional way. Sometimes I've just reached out to people. I don't want a job. I just want to understand stuff. And that gives you insights or connects you to someone else who might be useful. So I used to like reach out to people who I thought were very interesting or maybe something I would like to do in the future, maybe not even now, but and people really responded. Like CSOs of large companies have responded, and I've had coffee chats with them, which didn't lead to a job offer, but it gave me a lot, or maybe even a connection which would help. And then the third thing I would say, which is close to the point you mentioned, but maybe not just like just events, but I feel like I really found it useful, not useful, but like I think it's so important to invest in friends. Like Vale and I we were in the same batch, and we made so many friends. I mean, or made like less friends, but like we ended up doing so much together. We took trips together. We've been to each other's weddings all over the world. We've still traveled together, and I feel like it's not just beneficial because now we know people. One is in consulting, one is in VC, one is in consulting, and like there are so many people in different parts of sustainability, which will later become a very strong network. But honestly, like I moved to New York from Delhi with 0 people I knew. And today I have like this entire village, which is helping me survive. And that all came because we decided to just invest a lot in our friendship. So beyond the studying part of it, I think that's important. And gluing back to homework 4, it's not possible in LCA unless you have friends, because you will cry. And we were in Mexico, and literally we were still working on homework 4. So you need friends to maybe even get through some of the classes. But
all right. Thank you. For anyone in the room who does not know what homework 4 is, don't worry about it. So are we ready for questions from the audience? So if you can please think about maybe identifying the person on the panel who you would like to address the question to, and just say their name. That makes it a little easier to so that not everyone looks to the left and to the right. If it really is a broader question you don't know for sure, you can also do that. But if you have someone in mind, say their name.
I'm curious about how the Trump administration is affecting your, I wouldn't say day-to-day, but perhaps long-term strategy. What creative things are you thinking about to mitigate and or enjoy about the administration? I don't know where you stand, but I'm just really curious about how that's changing your world.
luckily, we're a global company, so like the impact in terms of work stopping or sustainability not being a priority is lesser because we have other regions to look at, and America is one of many. The negative is that the attitude of people who you've worked really hard on to convince that sustainability is important and they need to prioritize it in their function, that changes because it's kind of like an external indicator telling them like, oh, so this is optional or this is like an afterthought. And so I feel like that for me is the tough part. Like any internal sustainability person does is work on people and their mindset so that they prioritize that KPI. So that kind of is like you can see an attitude shift. Yeah, but I mean we're global, so it's not luckily stopping our work.
I mean, Valeria and I were talking about this a little bit, right, just before. I mean, it's definitely changing the temperature in the room, right, for certain customers. They're still passionate about it or they still want to do things, but now everything's under a bit more scrutiny, especially from a financial perspective. So it's no longer to just tell the carbon or climate story, you have to tell the financial story, right? Which is why that whole component we were talking about earlier about being able to tell a story, to visualize, use analytics, right? Very important in this current context, especially. I might say something a little profound, but like he's probably gonna be dead by 2050. So when you think about like the long-term strategy, right, and just like that these things are more than just one administration, right, or like one person, you have to help people think about the longer term game, right? And I think a lot of organizations that have these targets do think about that, but you can hear from Gauri, like it's hard operationally to always like make that feel really real for people. But that's our job, right?
Can I just get a sense from the room what other questions may be out there? Because I want to make sure we don't spend too much time on a single question. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, wow. Okay. So do you mind if we leave it here and we just go to the next question? Okay. I think you raised your hand first. Go ahead.
Hello. Thank you for all the insights. Really helpful. So one, I have 2 questions. One's a little bit more straightforward than the other. So if you or your team is hiring for someone, they're a SUMA graduate, they have the classes you'd like to see them have, are there also any like certificates that would make them stand out, like GHG protocol or GRI or something else along those lines? And then second question, if that's okay. Christoph mentioned that one of the key areas for analytics in addition to LCA and GIS is climate modeling. And I'm curious if climate modeling or risk and scenario assessment class is something that you would recommend and is, relevant in the work that you do.
First of all, sustainability and climate risk, that's from the GAAP. They do like climate risk stuff. And then second of all, the SBTI expert from Science-Based Target, SBTI basically. So one demonstrates your climate risk skill, and then one demonstrates your greenhouse gas skill. And then in terms of like climate modeling, so for climate modeling, it really depends. It will be a very good thing to add if you're already sort of like a developer or a climate science person. So the application of that class will be mostly for companies who does like climate modeling and sell their model data for like other companies. Like what you're expected to do is like you go inside, you go like either Python or like some other usually I think RStudio, because a lot of climate scientists love RStudio. And then you just like start typing the code and start actually gathering data and selling the data. So that can be a good course for others. But for consultancy who doesn't have like their internal climate risk data, then it won't be a necessary class. It's always something nice you have, but it won't be necessary.
Work experience is probably more valuable than certifications, which maybe certifications are more accessible than jobs always are. But I encourage you to do like SUMA net impact, like, projects, to do fellowships. Like I did the EDF Climate Corps Fellowship. I'm on the Alumni Advisory Board now. If you guys want to talk about that afterwards, like hit me up. We'd be happy to chat with you about it. It's a great program. But those types of opportunities give you real world experience and help translate that into confidence for whoever's going to hire you, that you know what to do beyond just what Gauri was saying earlier, like the subject matter expertise, like you know how to apply these practices.
All right.
We just
quickly, yes.
Just very quickly to add on to that last point that Julia made. Some of us are international, so being able to make the point as to why your previous experience in your home country is helpful and valuable for a job in the US, especially if it's the first time that you're getting a job in the US, can also be very helpful. So give that a thought and how you can kind of bring those skills from previous experiences to here.
Thank you. We did 2 questions in the front. I think I also saw hands further in the back. Do those hands still exist? Yes, there we go.
Here. Thank you guys. This was super informative. I am curious, under sustainability, there's so many different types of roles and so many different types of companies. For someone who's like looking at such a broad swath of possibilities, what were some of the factors that caused you guys to end up where you were, and how much of it was intentional and how much of it was just chance?
For me, it was definitely just the summary of what I had done. So I had been working at a solar company. I had run large scale customer success stuff. I'd had to do some sales. I'd had to write some SQL to analyze what was going on with things and do some engineering build out. That then prepped me really well to go into an extremely operations intensive role, which frankly could be plucked out of the AI industry and placed somewhere else. Hey, you have a lot of things to do. They have to be done at quality. They have to be done in a short amount of time. Is it AI? Is it something else? But building on that experience and having the tools to be able to say, oh, I can assess how the quality is actually doing. I can look at this stuff at a large scale. Those skills are independent of sustainability, but then you can also take that to say, well, if you're looking to do something sustainable, I know how to actually do that. And so that, I mean, to the point of it's not just the certificates, this is kind of the exact case of like, I could then shift this experience pretty readily into something like large scale e-commerce with, I know how to look at your data very quickly and understand what you need to do. It's AI, but still sustainability.
This advice early on in SUMA, because suddenly you're just like, you can do anything from like climate to like women's studies to like, anything under sustainability. I think it's really important to pick your focus area within sustainability. Like I quickly understood in my first term that it's going to be environmental and maybe mostly climate. And on the other, so it's important to pick your focus area. And on the other hand, understand what your strengths are. So my strengths, I knew it at that point, was getting stuff done, operationalizing stuff. Like I don't like to be on a reporting level. I'm not really good at like just doing the reporting stuff. I want to get my hands dirty and get the work done. So operationalizing stuff. So I knew that was a strength of mine. And then I figured out that I wanted to do environmental, and that really helped me then focus down classes and then also look for specific jobs that I knew would be more fun for me.
I will double down on that. I left my career to say like I'm going to go work in house and like be a sustainability manager, and then somehow here I am now, like over a decade into my career, exactly back where I was before, basically, which is working in software but in sustainability and focused on analytics, right? So like to Gauri's point, it's because analytics were my strength, and as much as I tried to like pivot and do other things, right, the analytics were always like the thing that was the underlying strength that people wanted to hire me for or wanted me to do work on, right? So know what your strength is and just own that and like help convey that to people, right? And to Valeria's earlier point, don't let past experiences go wasted, right? Like many of you probably came in with amazing careers. You learned so many amazing transferable skills, like learn how to paint that narrative, even if it's not one-to-one, right? Like Valeria's not practicing law anymore. That's super helpful for like anything you do. Like there's so many policies and regulations coming out now. She has that critical lens. That's probably such an advantage compared to others in her field.
Thank you for explaining that so well, especially the transferable skills that all of you talked about. And if you are lucky, if one is lucky that the transferable skill is also one's passion, that is a good recipe to do pretty much anything, right? More questions, please. Yes, go ahead. Sorry, yes. Oh, you're just waiting for the mic.
Now that you're all out of SUMA and on in your careers, how important do you think it is, whatever that first job is coming out of SUMA, to sort of set the course of your career going forward?
Job that I got when I first got out of SUMA. I actually started as an intern in ISS Corporate, and I started just doing research for them for some stuff. And once I was there, I noticed a need that existed, and I pointed it out to my manager, and I was like, hey, there's something here that I think you're missing and, might be interesting to take a look at. And I made my case, and that's what got me hired. You know what I mean? So just don't also be scared of like taking a random internship, because you just need to get your foot in the door. Once you're in, you can start kind of moving your way around things, and don't let that also first experience be, you can still make a job out of it even if you don't think at the beginning that's something that you would want to do long term.
Yeah, I don't want anyone to think that the first job you take is going to pigeonhole you for the rest of your career. It's just not, right? Like so many examples of true pivots in careers that like people within sustainability pivot all the time. Even people who are like very high level executives at very large companies, right? Like have customers that have done that, right? At like Microsoft, for instance. So you can always pivot. And honestly, whatever job you take is probably going to teach you something that's going to be applicable later on. So if that helps embolden people to just take something that sounds interesting, it doesn't mean you're going to work in that forever.
One quick point I'd also add is don't shoehorn what you want that job to be into the job. I mean, my experience in this was I really tried to get the first AI company I was at to care about carbon. They did not care about carbon, but they did have thousands of workers in the Philippines. And so that was really the place where I should have been focusing my attention, where it was like, I want to do something sustainable, but I was only thinking about carbon. Like, so, do look for the opportunity, don't say, oh, well, if I'm not doing this specific thing, it's useless. Like instead be willing to say, what can I do here? Where does the opportunity actually lie?
So as we navigate this job market, apart from, coffee chats and networking, what are some of the things that we can do to create like a sort of an inbound? And how did you guys navigate the the Career Design Center, and what were the resources that you used? Like what more can be done apart from the typical?
Point for people who are coming from outside the US, earnestly be invested in the people you are talking to. The time you are talking to them and these other elements does not guarantee then a budding relationship. Be interested in what they are doing and have that be the focus of what you are into, and then say, who else would you recommend I talk to? Or about this, where else should I look? Add something on, but be earnestly invested. If it's a play, people won't care. If you actually care, they're going to create that inbound for you, and you're going to get champions.
For a person who has not statistics or like data analytics, other than the certificates, and having no knowledge of what tools are out there, what are the minimal requirements would you want to see on a resume if I am applying for a data analyst or like the field of analytics, like in terms of, I don't know, Python, R abilities or something else. But yeah.
Job. I didn't need any of that for my job. They asked me if I knew how to use Excel, and I said yes, even though I only knew some. And I'm such an Excel pro right now, having learned literally watching YouTube videos in the job, or like having my brother teach me. So it's not like it's needed, at least in my experience. I don't know for everyone else, but like also don't be afraid to say that you know things and then do some research beforehand the interview, No, it's not lying. It's like because you do know things. Like I did know how to use Excel. I probably didn't know it to the extent that they expected me to. But I'm a quick learner. And I did say that, like, I'm a quick learner. I'm a curious person. I'm a nerd. I like to learn things. And I literally said that to my hiring manager. And he was like, yeah, cool. Totally. And I did put in the hours.
One super quick thing on that is that if you're interviewing and there's like a data analysis like interview and you are struggling and you don't like it, you will not like your job. That's a really good indicator of like, I'm not a good fit for this role. And like, just take onus, like, just feel good about that. Like, great, not for me. Like, I can move on.
Interesting. All right. The last question of the evening, please.
Hi, thank you for sharing your stories, and congratulations to all of you for landing your dream jobs. I guess my question is more like organizational. So I was a professional before I became a student, and then I'm now a student, and it's a very different life than when you're working full time, right? So as you coming out of this, do you have a word of advice for students in their last semesters as far as like how to better organize themselves or how to shift their focus to like becoming a professional and kind of like wrapping up the student life and finding the courage to put themselves out there and, all these good tricks and tools that you used, and maybe a word of advice. Thank you.
I had a similar experience. I worked for like 10, 11 years before doing the masters. It was very tough for me to like get into this life and then get out of this life. So I think what I did was I actually loaded my first 2 terms quite a bit with classes. And then in my mind, in my last term, I had kind of checked out of classes. It was more about the internship. And also at the same time, looking at I was interning at Colgate at a role I did not like. I didn't know if there was an opportunity available. So I was consistently like talking to other people, looking at different opportunities, thinking would it make sense or not, like not trying not to be married to this internship and trying to like focus on that. But I just think it really helped. And there's some advice someone had given me to like make your last semester as free as possible from classes so you can try and focus on using that to shift into your career life post that. And whether that means like sometimes getting certificates if like that's what you need, or like just trying to free up even mind space to do interviews and stuff like that, I think that really helped me.
Continue the conversation. Luckily, we're all connected through what's called Columbia University Alumni Directory, to which you also as current students already have access. With that, thank you very much to the audience for all your questions. And thank you very much, Gauri, Julia.